The Human Founder Podcast by Gali Bloch-Liran.
Hi, I'm Gali Bloch-Liran and welcome to The Human Founder, the podcast where we speak about the mental aspects of the entrepreneurial journey. Entrepreneurs often describe the emotional roller coaster that is embedded in being an entrepreneur or investor, where you experience the lowest of lows when you start to prepare to a future in which you might not be around to teach your kids the important stuff about life, and the highest of highs when you are biohacking your way out electro hypersensitivity of a condition that is considered incurable. And it's from that place of uncertainty, the need to constantly self manage ourselves, keep up our energy, and be mentally resilient in order to deal with everything. Well, it's not easy. In each episode, I will be talking to entrepreneurs, investors, psychologists, being their sounding board, with the goal of creating a space for this less spoken about layer, which is the mental aspect accompanying the entrepreneurial journey. I will also share tips and tricks to help boost your focus, clarity, and mental resilience. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Maya Elhalal. Hey, Maya, and it's really,
Hi.
really great to have you here with me.
Boker Tov.
Boker Or. Before we dive into today's episode, make sure to follow the podcast in any of your podcast apps you're listening at. That way, you'll keep the finger on the pulse and be updated right away with all the new episodes straight to your feed. Did you press follow? So let's dive in. So Maya, let's introduce you to those who are not familiar yet with your beautiful smile this morning. You are a biohacker, editor of longevity.science, a blog on science-based tools to living healthier for longer, a certified resilience trainer by HeartMath Institute, a Wim Hof method instructor. You have a biohacking lab in Ramat HaSharon where people come to practice ice water immersion. And to date, you operate the only sensory deprivation tank available for public use in Israel. You celebrate today your 45th birthday, so I'm very happy to have you here with me and to greet you in this very special day. You live in Ramat HaSharon with your 3 kids, Agam, Zoe, and Nelly, and your dog, Lucy. So many great things, and we have so many things to speak about. And when I first met you a couple of months ago in Hoffman Kaufman Foundation, so I was very touched both by your story and the impact and the value that you give to people and to entrepreneurs and founders along the way. And today you're here maybe to share with us a little bit all the secrets or hacks of biohacking to understand what is it actually about and what brought you to this place. So let's begin shortly in the past, like what brought you to go to the place you are today, and then we'll move into biohacking.
Sounds good.
Go ahead.
So 5 years ago today, it was one of the lowest points in my life. It was at the peak of my autoimmune flare-up when I was dealing with a severe case of electrohypersensitivity. I could barely leave the house then. I celebrated that birthday in a very small circle of friends on the beach because that I couldn't go to any other place or a public place. I was basically confined to my own home for many months during that period. And I remember when we raised a toast, all I wished for was to stop being constantly in pain. And fast forward 5 years to today, it was anything but a spontaneous remission or a miracle. It's the process of like gradual step by step biohacking my way out. But today I'm thrilled to celebrate my 45th birthday free of any pain, like no memory of the autoimmune condition that I used to have. So I am very, very grateful and thankful.
Could you imagine 5 years ago that within 5 years of very hard work and a lot of learning about yourself, about science, biology, other things that we'll speak about later, could you see yourself in this point of time, healthy, strong, in a different position than you were?
So there was a time or a specific night where I couldn't. And that's when I started planning. I said, like, if there's no breakthrough, I can connect the dots already, and I see how things are getting worse from day to day. That I said, if it doesn't get better soon, I really need to start preparing for a time when I'm not there. And I said I would start recording videos that my children would get every year according to age, with things that I wanted to share. And I think that that was a very meaningful breaking point, where, like, the morning after, I, for the first time, started to ask myself questions that I didn't have the courage to ask before. I think because I was so heavily invested in the image of who I am.
The perception.
Yeah. And then that was really the first time that I started asking the right question, and that led to a breakthrough. And from then, it's not like things improved immediately, but I started introducing different changes, and I realized what one of the key contributors to the problem was.
And what was it? What did you find out?
So it turned out that in the apartment that I had moved to after my divorce, I was exposed in the area of my head to a really high level of non-ionizing radiation from faulty wiring in the wall just behind where my head was in the bed. And that, together with all the other stressors, it was like the perfect shitstorm in my life. Then it all added up to severe autoimmune flare-up and electrohypersensitivity. But I think from the moment that I started gaining like a sense of agency, that there are things that I can do that make things better, I gained my hope back. And for the first couple of years, better meant not worse. So it stopped getting worse for a while, then it plateaued for a longer while, and only then it started getting better. So I think it's important to realize that when you're, sometimes to stop the bleeding is, are you okay?
Yeah.
So sometimes just take your time. We'll cut it. Take your time.
Okay, you can continue.
Cool. So I think the moment I started experiencing that there are things that I can do that make things a little bit better, was when I gained back hope that, and I had a mental model already that I was meditating on. I was using Joe Dispenza meditations and some of his work during the time that I couldn't even leave the house. So I was spending hours sometimes sitting at home on the grass in natural light, meditating and living in a world, in a reality where I am healthy, where I have no pain, where I leave the house. And I think that played a huge role looking back.
You're describing beautifully two different situations that what matters in it is your ability to look into yourself and what's going on there. The electrical thing, it was just like a trigger, just like was a stressor that made other thing to start to act. And you had to go through a very, very difficult time, and the way that you describe it, to get to the low and then plateau, and only later on it began to be better. This is one side of it. And then the other side, imagining a new reality in which you're healthy. Thanks to the meditations, you again needed to work on yourself in a very, very immersed and deep manner, and to get connected to new mental models and the meditations in order to even imagine yourself in a different situations, and how much power and energy it takes on the one hand, and on the other hand, this is what helps us to cure ourselves and to be able that after we hit the ground, like to get back the responsibility and the powers and the will in order to help ourselves to rise up and to continue and to start to ask ourselves questions. Okay, what's going on in here? What is this situation trying to tell me or to show me about my life? And which direction do I choose to take it? And like we spoke,
I have to tell you, like,
yeah,
one
go ahead.
small anecdote.
Uh-huh.
A guy that I owe a great deal to is an entrepreneur who called me. He saw me, I think, on the Roni Kuban program on people who went off the grid. And he said, listen, you're not going to find me in any of the Facebook groups. But I have to tell you, I had what you now have. He was an entrepreneur during a really stressed out period in his life. He was on a high stakes call. He got a severe headache, and from that moment on, he started suffering from electrohypersensitivity. He said, people will tell you that this is something you will never heal from. And I can share with you that for about a year, I was doing these meditations, holding in my mind a very clear mental image of a time when I am past that, back in good health, working again, know that it is possible, even though people will tell you it is not. And he was like my 4-minute mile for electrohypersensitivity, because everything that I had read about before said it's a chronic condition that you never heal from.
And sometimes we just need this person or this sign or this something that will show us that there may be another way, another path, and we have to choose to believe in it and then to work very hard in order to create.
And it was a person I could identify with.
Yeah.
He too was an entrepreneur, someone like he was me, and he could do it. I believed that I could do it, and the belief that I will be able to do it was extremely helpful.
It's very strong. So you wake up the way after and you start to do those meditations, and after like understanding that you have to do something in order to try and improve the quality of your life, because you want to be a great mom for many years for your children, and you have to do something, And how does it lead you to all this understanding of biohacking, and what is it biohacking, and how did it help you cure yourself actually?
So basically what I had to start doing was like look under the hood, open the black box, and really understand the underlying mechanism of what was going wrong. Why wasn't I sleeping? Why did I have chronic headaches? Why did I have such severe decline in cognitive abilities, in memory? I'll give you just one like really daily example. One morning, like I have crazy backlog at work because I can't concentrate. I'm constantly tired, but I need to run some bank errands, and I sit with my phone and I get like a 5-digit code to enter to the bank website. I'm holding my phone here and I need to enter the code. It's just like, working memory of 5 seconds less. I can't do it. Something that I used to clearly be able to do until a day before, now I can't do. And that's just one example of the many things when I started noticing that my thinking becomes slower. I'm not able to concentrate as I used to. I'm not as coherent when I speak. And so I had to list all these symptoms and one by one start to understand what was going on and what I needed to do in order to make it better, how I would measure it, like where is it now? That would be my baseline, something that we always need to establish when we start biohacking so that you know if you're going in the right direction. What would be the biomarker or the metric that we want to track, and then introduce some intervention.
For those who are not familiar, explain to us what is it, a biomarker?
So let's say, for example, let's take anxiety. Mm-hmm. So I was suffering from anxiety daily during that period. And one biomarker, like a way for you to track your level or anxiety or ability to relax, is your heart rate variability. Basically, it's a measure of how flexible you are in going from a stress state to a relaxed state. And that flexibility is your mental resilience. So that would be one.
The biological one.
Yeah.
The one that you can measure.
Yeah. Something that I can measure, that I can use feedback tools to see how I do. Another measure would be, because I was chronically stressed, my sugar level went up and I was pre-diabetic, even though you would imagine that the way I eat, I wouldn't be. Mm-hmm. But I was just like this shy of becoming diabetic. And so I started tracking my sugar level daily with a continuous glucose monitoring. And
you did it all at home, like by yourself? How did you do it?
Yes.
Technically?
So most of these tools are now available for you to buy. Some in Israel, some you order online, but many of them you can start working with at home by yourself.
Is there a chance of over checking ourselves, like, and that what will increase the anxiety, because we're looking at our heart rate all the time or the sugar level, and then we're like getting obsessed of the measurements and to see how it functions, how we function?
So I think it's a really good point. For me today, like you see that I'm not wearing my Oura ring today.
I am.
But for many years, I wore it daily. And I think a really good biohacking tool is a tool that gives you enough insights so that you gain better awareness of your body, where you don't need the technology to tell you anymore if you're stressed or not.
It's like it trains you, and then you can let it go.
Yeah.
You're already trained by yourself.
Exactly. So I think we become so detached from our bodies, from how we feel, from the like subtle differences in emotions and states, that at the beginning we need the technology to help us. But now I can pretty much tell what my sugar level is. I know what triggers it to go up, and now I don't need it anymore. But it took many tools, like it took sequencing my microbiome and wearing a continuous glucose monitoring, and wearing the Oura ring to understand how stress affects my sleep. And over time, I learned how to, basically, my healing is the result of a newfound homeostasis. So the body is in balance again. It was more...
in a much healthier way.
Yes. And it was basically, I took out the things that were disrupting the balance more than I added new things. So, for example, I went back to living in natural light. I went back to movement. I went back to a diet that was lower on refined carbs. And gradually, I hacked my way back to sleep, back to normal sugar levels, to energy production, because I was constantly tired. So and can you over track yourself? I think you can probably, and it's not the technology's fault. It's how you work with the technology.
Exactly. Which is the same for, screens with children.
Yeah.
It's our approach and attitude towards it. Maya, we, both you and I, we worked with many founders and entrepreneurs and investors and tech professionals and people that are in very high pace and peak performance. And we speak a lot about stress and burnout. Try to take us from the biohacking angle. What can be done? What can we do, each one at home, like simple things in order to help ourselves to reduce the stress level and to reduce the burnout so that we will have a healthier, more balanced and sustainable life in order to achieve our goals. So give us like few examples of methodologies that we can all embrace into our lives.
So you and I started this talk, and I don't know if it's recorded or not, but with taking like 2 deep breaths, right? So that would probably be biohacking tool number 1, breath.
It's even more basic. It's like life hack number 1.
Yeah.
Remember to breathe, but really to stop and take breath. Really.
So sometimes, now I notice that sometimes when I think I'm anxious, I'm actually really excited, but forgetting to breathe. So just breathing there helps. And I think one thing that I started using was looking at the stress continuum from, let's say, -5 is fully relaxed, like almost right before you fall asleep, to +5, which is high stress, could be peak performance or could be toxic stress. But that would be our +5, and say that day to day on a normal basis, we want to be on like a balanced 0, able to flexibly move according to life's need from one side to the other. So using what we call hormetic stressors that are very short, acute, controlled, help us go from a stress state to a very relaxed state in a way that builds resilience. So it's like...
Give us examples to those things.
For example, cold exposure. You did that in Hoffman Kaufman, right?
Yeah.
So when we immerse in ice water, we take the stress response like to +5 in a few seconds, and we learn with breath to find comfort in extremely discomfort environment. So this is us going from the +5 all the way down to -5 in 2 minutes.
I really remember this experience that it was the first time for me, and they're preparing you. It's going to be very cold, yada yada, and then it really is like that. All you need to do is like to breathe it inside and get connected to it. And yeah, it's cold, but it's not as horrible as it sounds like, because you help it, like your body, to digest it and to get relaxed within it, within the pain or within the suffer, and then you get used and then you go out. So it's like a cycle within it.
And the beauty is that this practice, and this is just one example, has a cross-adaptation effect. If you can do that, you can manage any other stress better, because it is the same mechanism. What you gain here is vagal tone, or a flexibility of the vagus nerve to go from a stress to a relaxed state. So what are some other examples if this was...
Wait, before we go to other examples, so what would be your recommendation? Like to do it once in a while, like to do it every day? Like what will be the impact that will really make a change on our bodies and minds and resilience?
So we now know enough about cold exposure to really know what the effective dose is for each medical condition.
Okay, that's great.
So for the medical condition that I was dealing with, chronic inflammation, there's a specific research that showed that if you deep for 2 minutes in 4 degrees Celsius once every 4 days,
Wow.
basically you can manage your inflammation with no
It's really specific.
medication, or because they know for how many days forward the effect is carried.
And for example, for chronic stress or burnout, what
So,
would be a good dose?
so one thing that I think is really important to say here is that more is not better. And specifically, high achiever, competitive, A-type personality entrepreneurs
Say no more.
have the risk of abusing this tool, of overdoing it. It also can get addictive because you get the dopamine high that feels amazing, but more is not better. Actually, we now know there's a research that shows that you gain more benefit up to 11 minutes per week, but not in one ice bath, say over 3 or maybe 4 ice baths a week. And then from then, there's a declining benefit. So I think I'll tell you what I do. And I think what is important here to understand is that everyone should find the right dose for them, and it changes. For us women, it changes during the month. For everyone, it changes during the life cycle. It changes if you had a good night's sleep or you didn't, because stressors tend to add up.
But does it have to be monitored and guided, or that people can do it just by themselves, because it can also be dangerous?
So the first dip, and this is why I insist when people want to just sign up to the ice spa that I have, I insist that they first do a fundamentals workshop to understand what the Wim Hof method is, what the underlying mechanism is, what it does to the body, how to pick the right dose for you today. Understanding that it's not just about the ice dip, it's about the recovery after. And the dose should be always either equal to or better, smaller than the recovery resources that you have. Because if you don't recover, then you start going to burnout.
So if we'll take it and make it wider, the sentence that you just said, it's a beautiful one, that we're in very high competing environment all the time, and we make a lot of efforts in everything that we do, right? As peak performers, entrepreneurs, etc. And you're talking about the performance and the recovery time.
Yeah.
And that the recovery time should be at least the same, if not longer, right? Than the performance itself. Now,
exactly. So not necessarily the time, but more the resources. And the resources is also what you eat, how much you sleep, what other stressors you have planned.
And if I take it as a metaphor and I think about most of the founders or investors that I know, they hardly invest resources and time and energy and everything on their recovery. And it's like, it sums it all, right? We can't just be in the performance all the time and not take care of our recovery. I just mentioned the Danny Avdia earlier in another podcast, and I just met him yesterday, and he described how is the routine in the NBA of taking care of their body is amazing. They play approximately 1.5, 2 hours in one training. And all the rest of the day is a physiotherapy, and it's ice
immersion,
yeah, and it's like a massage, and it's saunas, and it's like everything else in order to take care of the body, and they just train for 1.5 hours. And he said that this is the thing he learned to appreciate the most, because without this, we have nothing. And going back to founders that they are running all the time so quickly, so like in high pace, and the recovery element is hardly there.
I agree. And I think you asked me, I think it was even before we even started, but about the electro-hypersensitivity, if that is my why. And I shared with you that I now realized that my health crisis was the result of a decade of burnout. And basically, my accident with exposure to non-ionizing radiation just pushed me over the edge. For someone else, it can be corona that pushes them over the edge. It can be like a minor surgery that they never really heal from. It can be a car accident with a whiplash. It can be emotional trauma. It can be trying to juggle everything, like the startup and starting a family, and I don't know, maybe taking care of a parent. So stressors add up, and then something comes along that by itself would be small, but then it pushes you over the edge, and then something breaks.
You speak, and I feel like Gali, she's talking to you.
Tell me.
No, I feel like Gali, you should chill out a little bit. Like Maya is talking to you now. I'll tell you after. I'll share some stories.
So these stressors, and cold immersion is just one example, and it doesn't even have to be dipping in ice water. You know, you can start with cold showers. Is great. And it can be, so this is cold shock. You can practice heat shock in saunas. You can practice intermittent fasting, intermittent hypoxia. So the Wim Hof breathing protocol has breath holds. That's another example. And all these like really highly controlled stressors help us deal with chronic stress better. They just make our resilience zone higher. But then, like you said with the NBA players, it's really important to invest in the other side of the spectrum too. This is, for example, why I wanted to get a sensory deprivation tank. It is like if cold immersion is the +5 of stress, this would be like the -5. Like you really go to like almost sleep state, deep meditation, where you get all the benefits of meditation and more.
So like people who come to train or work with you, so like one day they do this or another day they do that, or they mix it, or how does it work?
So it
the
depends
changes between the different
it depends. So last night someone came who practiced daily, and when he comes in the morning, he finishes the protocol with an ice bath. When he comes in the evening, he starts with an ice bath and finishes with the sensory deprivation tank.
So it's like very tailor-made to each person and his body or her body?
Yeah, it depends what they want to do. So some professional athletes come for extreme recovery, and they do cold immersion, and they can do a sauna and lymphatic drainage, and then the sensory deprivation tank, and that would be like an extreme recovery in say 2 hours. And other people need different, and that's the thing with biohacking, and I think in health in general, no one else is going to figure it out for you.
You have to explore it.
You have to explore curiously, to measure it. People react differently to the very same thing. People react differently themselves in different places along the stress continuum. And the dose changes. That sweet spot of where the more stress you add, the higher the performance is, it changes all the time. And I think that's one of the things that the last 5 years taught me, is to check with myself. Where am I today? Really, and to stop ignoring. And I think sometimes when it's really difficult to be in the sensory deprivation tank, for example, is when I don't want to have an honest conversation with my head, with myself.
You were talking, and I was thinking that maybe the biohacking tools just help us sometimes to deal with our emotions or deep anxieties, that it's sometimes difficult for us to really acknowledge and be in an authentic and open and deep conversation with ourselves about how we feel, what
Mm-hmm.
happens to us, what impacts us from the past. And through biohacking tools, and if you're being like more rational or
Mm-hmm.
measuring, different parameters in your
Mm-hmm.
body, so the more rational part helps you really to see what
Mm-hmm.
happens in your body and to tell the same story from a different angle.
I agree. I'll give you just some examples of how you can test how stressed you are when you keep telling yourself, no, it's all good. I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like I'm going to get there soon. It's the last mile. So, how you can tell. Um, so, glucose monitoring will let you know how stressed you are because sometimes when you track it continuously, you can see how getting a WhatsApp message or an email from an investor would spike your sugar level even when you're still fasting or when you're supposed to be in ketosis now or in low carb and there's no justification for that spike in sugar. You can actually see the text coming in and the sugar spike that you get.
So let's say that I have this glucose test available and I see that my sugar now runs high because I got this message or good message or bad message. That's the way it impacted me. What can I do in this very moment once I know it?
I think one thing that you can always do, and you can do it even when you're in the middle of a meeting or a Zoom call and no one can tell that you're doing it, is go back to breathing and breathe like 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out to the area of the heart. And really like even
I took a breath. Did you see?
just and just relax the shoulders, soften the face, even mute it for a moment and take a nice sigh of relief. When we practice with biofeedback, we can actually see what thoughts, memories, images relax the body and give us a more coherent heart rate. And then this is an asset that we can always tap into when we need to relax. Going out to natural light, taking off your shoes,
getting grounded.
Can help you relax. You can monitor, the ring will tell you your rate of breathing per minute. And you will see that when you're more tense, we tend to breathe shallow and high to the chest rather than low and deep to the belly. One thing that I like to do is create a list of assets where I can go to replenish.
When you need.
What?
When you need.
Yeah.
So
you have that, and it
ready.
can be like a list of what depletes your energy and what renews your energy. And we need to be in check, like your balance, your bank balance. So it has to be like that with energy. And this is probably the most important thing that we can do to prevent burnout.
And this is also something that, like we spoke earlier on recovery, that high performer people they're not enough aware of it, of the recovery, the need in recovery. So the same goes to energy management. I speak with lots of founders and they are busy with the performance and the deck and the meetings and the roadshows and the funding and the features and everything that is going on. But they hardly pay attention to the energy management of how they feel in this very moment, or in what kind of being they want to be in this specific interaction, or when they go to this meeting or that meeting, to have these 2 minutes of mental preparation of how they really want to be there. And managing our energy in a very minded way really helps us, because at the end it's energy, it changes, right? It changes its structure, it changes a different kind of energy. But the fact is that it's not endless for us as human beings and as founders. It's not endless. And we have to keep the finger on the pulse and to see what's going on there. And sometimes we have days that we begin the day and we're in the low energy. That's the way we are today, and it's okay, and it happens. So being able to listen to this level of energy and to work with it and not against it, and to be able to listen to it, and it tells us a story, it tells us something that maybe the body needs to rest a little bit today. Maybe it's better for us to go to some deep work and a state, and not to have so many meetings at the day because we're low on energy today.
So
Or
I
maybe-
think for us women,
Yeah.
one thing, I read a book that really changed how I think about it, is I try to plan the month according to the cycle.
Mhm.
And I know that when I'm ovulating, it's probably the best time to do things that are, um, to be in external interaction, to shoot this.
It also makes sense when you think about it,
podcast.
psychologically. It makes
Yeah.
sense.
So the wisdom of knowing where you are in the cycle, when it's time,
To do
y-
what?
to analyze, to plan, when it's time to execute, and I think like we can do it over the month, but basically you can do it at
the-
any point in time. And if you see that if you're not in the right state in order to achieve what you want to do right now, so usually there's an intervention, and biohacking is really, really good at that. So for example, like dipping your face in cold water would get you that dopamine rush that you sometimes need in order to wake up. And a friend told me who has a podcast, Eitan Azaria, who came. He has a podcast on peak performance, and he came to the sensory deprivation tank in the morning, and from then he went to shoot a podcast, and he said, I was sleepy. I was just too relaxed.
So you need to work with it. I remember, on the other hand, that I had a very not so good phone call that made me very anxious, and I was on the way to SUP in the morning, and I couldn't get relaxed, and I was paddling, and I felt like my heart rate, and I was angry, and I had so many bad emotions. I couldn't get it out of my body, and then like after 30 minutes of paddling, I stopped. I jumped into the water. It was like, now it's still pretty cold. And then like my whole body relaxed, It's like all my thoughts, all the things that were going on in my head and my mind and my heart, everything like shut down.
Yeah.
And I was rejuvenated, and I could, get myself back. So we also need to know our mechanisms and what can help us. Like you said, to have the list of what kind of hacks can help us.
Yeah.
And to take the right hack in the right situation. You cannot always go to be in the water, right? But to know how to use it in the right manner to help us feel better. Maya, let's talk a little bit about longevity. Technology is here. Life are getting, hopefully, I mean, we're living more. But the thing is, the quality of the life and what happens there, and it's not necessarily goes in the same direction. That the longer you live, not necessarily the quality of the life is the same. So what can we do in order to impact the quality of the life and longevity and the way we age?
So it's not about, the whole thing is not about living longer, but living healthier for longer. So it's about expanding your health span rather than just your lifespan. And there is a lot that we can do. And I think as entrepreneurs, one thing to realize is that sometimes we need to sacrifice the short term for the long term. So that means we may not be able to do as much as we hoped this week, but we will be able to do a lot more this year if we don't pull too many all-nighters. Or actually, we shouldn't be pulling any all-nighters at all, which is something that entrepreneurs do all the time. And I think one of the recovery assets that many entrepreneurs, and that I just didn't understand how important it was sleep. I thought I could have 3 kids and keep working full time. And that just didn't work. I think it was like one of the biggest contributors to my illness. So I think there is no one thing that we can do with longevity. It's really small changes that add up over a very long time. So it can be how we eat. Even just a small caloric restriction goes a really, really, really long way in longevity. A really long way. What we eat, how we move. So we think a lot about nutrition, but most of us have movement nutrition, like nutrition deficiencies. I can't remember her name, but the brilliant woman who wrote "Move Your DNA" talks about how we miss many movement aspects that are crucial for longevity. How we manage stress, our social interactions. So I think feeling lonely and socially isolated is probably like one of the biggest contributors to poor health,
Actually,
to burnout.
now it was really declared as a really serious epidemic. The organizations in the U.S. Health Department, they really recognized loneliness as one of the biggest epidemics in nowadays, and how important it is to address it in order to improve our life and well-being.
And so just a few days ago, it suddenly hit me the difference between two people who came to practice at the Biohacking lab, both of them dealing with a serious illness. One of them came with his wife, fully supported. She was all in trying to figure out what they might be able to do. And you could feel like the level of support he had. And on the other hand, the other guy came by himself, shared with me the troubles that he was having with his spouse since he became ill. And I could really, really see how the loneliness, the rejection played a huge, huge role
in his recovery and in his ability to be better.
So that's huge.
And you've mentioned the movement in the context of longevity, but if we'll span it a little bit, so as founders, as people who work a lot, movement is really crucial. And a lot of the time we just sit, right? We sit and we work and we write a code, or we have some kind of conferences or meetings. And how can we integrate movement into our day-to-day life, just, as part of the deal?
So there are many ways that you can work and gain some movement, and it's crucial. We now know that people who sit more age faster. You can really measure it in the length of telomeres and other biomarkers that we mentioned. The good news is that it's reversible. So a standing desk, on a balance board, taking frequent breaks, like every 20 or 30 minutes, taking a short break for movement, taking the stairs rather than the elevator, going out to work in natural light is huge. Or at least, at the very, very least, going outside to natural light with our shirts off, without sunglasses, for say 10 or 15 minutes in the morning, and then in the afternoon, because our circadian rhythm, the biological clock, it's not just the effect on our sleep, but different organs have different tasks to perform according to where we are in the day. So that is very important. We can do high intensive interval training that like just 5 minutes workout. If we can do that, it really adds up. And it's been research to show how effective it is when you mix the different movement patterns. Breathing, like we need to put a reminder to take a few deep breaths, and it adds up. We all of us have an alarm to wake up. We need to have an alarm to go to sleep. Or to
the Oura ring, it tells me, Gali,
right.
prepare to go to bed, right?
Yeah. And
I don't listen. But
and just as we expect peers to be on time, one, like probably the most important meeting in our day is our time to go to bed.
With
and
ourselves.
we're constantly late for that. And the alarm should actually ring not at the time we aim to be in bed, but when we want to start our sleep routine. So every young mother knows how important a sleep routine
for the son
is to get the baby to sleep. And we need to have one for ourselves where we unwind. And during that
do you do it like every
I
day?
do
You
it.
have this routine?
I do it. I have it. And the kids know. The kids really know.
What do you do?
So my sleep alarm rings at 9:15 in the evening.
Wow, it's early.
Because I go to sleep at 10.
Wow.
And I sleep till 6:15 in the morning. And it took me a few years to be able to sleep because one of the things that I lost during my illness, because I had an overactive nervous system, I couldn't relax to sleep. I had a problem in melatonin production. Sleep hacking was a huge part of my recovery. And so now at 9:15, if it's the day when the kids are with me, they are already hopefully all asleep. And this is when like all the lights go down. The lights actually go down even before. And I go and take a hot shower. And I like don't look at any screens or actually any source of stress that I can't control. So I know that from when I start my sleeping routine is not the time to allow in any type of stress that I can't control. And basically it can come in through WhatsApp, email. So this is when I don't let anything
you speak
in.
about it, and in my body I feel like I want to do it as well. I want to be able to do it, and how much it's in here actually, and in here to be able to stop like everything and to tell ourselves that's enough for today. There's tomorrow, and now your body needs it, and just like shut down everything a little bit, like step by step, but be able to mute things. And how difficult is it for us to mute things?
And I think I got to that health crisis because I didn't listen. I was so addicted. I remember when I had extreme electrohypersensitivity, I couldn't do anything with the phone. I couldn't sit in front of a computer. I couldn't sit under, I had extreme light sensitivity. So basically, I just couldn't. And I felt the symptoms of withdrawal from addiction. And it was just so painful that I couldn't. And that's...
you don't want to get there again.
I don't. And because it was so painful, I understand, like in every cell of my body, the equation between chronic stress and illness. Now I know my life, it literally depends on my ability to manage my stress, sleep, and recover. And it's not a theoretical idea. I still have like a very, very clear memory of what it's like to live with chronic pain.
The price that you paid.
And I
Most
think
definitely.
that if I didn't have that experience and it wasn't so powerful, and what I hope is that I can share this with people so that they don't have to get to such a severe health crisis.
So we have so many other things we wanted to talk about, but I think that we'll hit a pause with this very, very, very strong message that I personally take really to myself, and we'll talk about it later. But really, sometimes only after something bad happens, this is when we get the understanding and the understanding in the body that we need to change something. And if we can help other people not to get there and to listen to this wisdom, to this research based tools and hacks that really work and really shows us what happens in our body, and not look at our body just as machines, but something that we need to take care of and to listen to what happens there. Maybe, we can help some other people to follow it and to be more attuned to what happens within them, and to see indications like the sugar or the heart rate or the breathing or any oxygen or any other measurements that we can check in order to see that we're in a better place and taking care of our bodies. And really, I'm taking this sentence that chronic stress is really the cause of so many illnesses, and it's really strong. It's really powerful. And we know nowadays that stress is one of the biggest challenges that we all have as humans, and especially as founders and entrepreneurs and everyone who is, in the front, peak performer. It's really stress. It's what navigates everything.
And Gali, if I can add to that, so if someone is listening to this right now,
Many people, not just someone.
and they have chronic back pain, frequent headaches, heart palpitations,
Stomach, lupus, things like that.
yeah, digestion problems. These are all signs that really we shouldn't be ignoring, because if we don't listen to it now, it's going to come much harder. Like, I know today that I got like whispers by the body, taps, excuse me. It asked kindly before it basically, kicked me to the floor where I was on my knees. And if I had listened earlier, it would not have taken me 5 years to go back to health and to balance.
That's very powerful. I'm really sending this wish and message to everyone who listens, including myself. Maya, thank you so much for coming here on your birthday and sharing all these very important messages and knowledge and hacks to live life in a better and healthier
Thank you for this podcast.
way. Yeah. And for people who want to get in touch with you, to come to the workshops or work with you, where they can find you?
So probably the best way is the best place is on the site. In Hebrew, it is he.longevity.science, or in English, longevity.science. I'm Maya Elhalal on Instagram, on Facebook.
You have beautiful videos with beautiful bathing suits, doing the ice all the time, and it's really, it's really nice.
It's my official uniform. I wear it to work.
It's a good one. So Maya, thanks again for coming. It was my pleasure to have you here with me.
Thank you so much, Gali. Toda.
Bekef. To our lovely listeners, we're going to hit pause until the next episode. That's also something I say to the entrepreneurs in the clinic in between sessions. The Human Founder podcast can be found on all the leading podcast platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and Podbean. You're invited to subscribe and follow us, and to be first here to new episodes. If you enjoyed listening, I would really appreciate if you share the podcast with other people who you think would derive value from it. Thanks to the amazing studios at Google for Startups that allow me to record all this content in here. Feel free to visit my website at galiblochliran.com and leave your details there if you wish to be updated and learn more about the mental aspects of the entrepreneurial journey. Let's hit pause. Till next time. Bye, Maya.